The first time they rammed our fence, I thought it was an accident. It was a chilly Tuesday morning, dust hanging low over the horizon as the sun crawled up behind the pine ridge. I was fixing the gate latch when a white pickup with magnetic HOA patrol stickers came barreling down our gravel drive like a bull in heat. The tires threw rocks, the bumper clipped the post, and with a loud crack, one of our cedar rails split clean in half. The truck stopped long enough for me to see the driver, a man in his 40s, aviator shades, smug grin, before he sped off again, kicking up a storm of gravel. Grandpa was on the porch with his coffee, watching the whole thing. "Again?" he said, voice rough as old rope. I nodded. "That's the third time this month." He set the mug down, slow and deliberate. "That's no accident. Our ranch, the Hollow Creek spread, had been in our family for generations. My great-grandfather staked it out before there were paved roads or streetlights. Now, it sat smack between an old farming community and a brand-new gated subdivision called Maple Ridge Estates, a place full of manicured lawns, imported marble mailboxes, and people who thought cowboy boots were just fashion accessories. When the subdivision went up, so did the trouble. The Homeowners Association from Maple Ridge claimed our land's old cattle path interfered with their new boundary fence. The county map said otherwise, but that didn't stop the HOA from acting like they owned half the valley. And then the trucks started showing up. Not real cops, fake ones. They wore uniforms with plastic badges and drove pickups plastered with HOA enforcement decals, like something out of a bad TV show. They'd stop by our property, threaten to fine us for unapproved fencing, or, when that didn't work, drive right into our post like they were knocking down dominoes. It was harassment, plain and simple. But Grandpa wasn't one to back down. That night, he pulled the old welding rig out of the barn. The thing hadn't been used since I was in high school, the paint chipped, cable stiff, but he dusted it off like it was a trusted rifle. "We'll see how they like it when the fence doesn't give," he muttered. I helped him drag out the steel rails he'd salvaged years ago from a dismantled railroad spur, thick, heavy lengths of iron that could stop a truck dead. We measured, cut, and buried them deep into the posts, welding the joints solid under the flickering blue light. Sparks rained down like fireflies, lighting up Grandpa's weathered face, eyes narrow, jaw clenched tight. "This land's got bones," he said. "If they want to fight, we'll give it one." The next morning, it started again. I heard the engine first, that low growl of a V8 coming down the dirt road, way too fast for comfort. I set down my coffee and walked to the fence line, heart pounding. Same white pickup, same fake decals. But this time, Grandpa was ready. He stood beside me, hands in his pockets, watching as the truck accelerated straight toward the corner post. There was a thud, a screech, and then silence. The front bumper crumpled like tinfoil. The driver's face turned white. Steam hissed from the radiator. Grandpa didn't say a word. He just smiled, slow and mean, and tipped his hat. The man gunned the engine, reversed, and peeled away, leaving behind a trail of oil and embarrassment. "Steel," Grandpa said, taking a sip from his thermos. Nature's way of saying don't mess with me. But it didn't end there. 3 days later, they came back, 2 trucks this time. They stopped at the end of the road, cameras in hand, snapping photos like they were gathering evidence. Then one of them shouted something about code violations and unauthorized modifications. Grandpa just waved. The next morning, we found a notice tacked to our mailbox. Notice of fines, $15,000 for non-compliant fencing issued by Maple Ridge Estates HOA Enforcement Division. Grandpa laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. "Fines," he said. "They can kiss the south end of a northbound mule." Still, I couldn't help but worry. What if they actually try to take us to court? He gave me that old look, the kind that said, "You're thinking like a city man, not a rancher." "Son," he said, "we don't lose the bullies. We outlaw them." Weeks passed, and the war over the fence grew meaner. Someone dumped nails in our driveway. The barn door got spray painted with "Trespassers will be removed." One morning, I found one of our goats wandering the road, the gate latch cut clean through. Who does that? The sheriff came by a couple times, but all he could say was, "Keep documenting it. Without a license plate, we can't prove a thing." That's when Grandpa decided to up the ante. He spent the next few nights sketching in his notebook, muttering to himself. When I asked what he was working on, he grinned. You'll see. By the weekend, we were digging again, but this time, deeper. He designed something between a cattle barrier and a tank trap. Hidden steel posts set in concrete, topped with decorative cedar rails so it looked harmless from the road. We finished by Sunday evening, sweat-soaked and sore but proud. Then, as if on cue, headlights appeared at the end of the road. Here we go, Grandpa said, grabbing his flashlight. The truck came roaring up, the same one with the bent bumper. This time, the driver was angry. He didn't even hesitate before gunning straight for the new section of fence. Only, when he hit, the whole front end of the truck bounced back like it struck a brick wall. The airbags deployed. The hood crumpled. For a moment, it was dead quiet except for the hiss of the radiator. Then Grandpa called out, "You boys okay in there?" They didn't answer. They just scrambled out, pale and trembling, and ran back down the road on foot. We called the sheriff that night, not to report the damage, but just to log the accident. When he saw the truck marks and the steel-reinforced posts, he whistled low. "You know," he said, "if they keep this up, they'll total their own trucks before they ever dent your fence." "That's the idea," Grandpa replied. But as the sheriff drove off, I noticed Grandpa wasn't smiling anymore. He stood by the fence, staring out into the dark field where the headlights had disappeared. "They are not done," he said quietly. "Not by a long shot." The next day, a certified letter arrived. Cease and desist order, an authorized construction on HOA property. According to their records, Maple Ridge Estates claimed the fence now extended 3 feet into community land. It was a lie. Of course, we had surveyor maps going back 80 years. But they were playing a new game now, paperwork warfare. When I told Grandpa, he didn't say a word for a long time. Then he pulled a folded envelope from his pocket, the deed to our land, yellowed and soft from age. "They can throw all the paper they want," he said. "This is the only document that matters." That night, someone shot out our floodlight. I woke to the sound of gravel crunching and engines idling. When I peeked through the window, I counted 3 trucks, parked just beyond the fence line, their headlights aimed straight at the house. Then I heard it clank, 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 like metal hitting metal. They were using crowbars, trying to pry the rails loose. "Grandpa!" I whispered. He was already up, shotgun in hand, face calm as stone. "Stay here," he said. "No way," I whispered back. He just looked at me once, steady and firm. "They are not here to talk." We stepped out onto the porch, the boards creaking beneath our boots. Grandpa chambered a shell, not to fire, just to make a point. The sound echoed across the field. The men froze. One of them, the same guy with the aviators, raised his hands. "You can't threaten HOA officials. That's a felony." Grandpa's voice was even. "Then stay off my land." There was a long silence. Then they climbed back into their trucks and drove off, spinning their tires in retreat. The next morning, I found tire ruts dug deep into the road, and one of their HOA patrol magnets left behind in the date. I picked it up, turned it over, and realized it wasn't magnetic at all, just a vinyl sticker. Cheap. Fake. So who were they, really? And what did they want with our land? After that night, everything changed. Grandpa didn't talk much the next morning. He just sat at the table, stirring his coffee while the sun crept across the kitchen floor. The shotgun leaned by the door. His welding gloves were still on the counter, stiff with soot. "You think they'll come back?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Not yet. Not till they've licked their wounds. But they ain't finished." Then he glanced at the vinyl sticker I'd found in the date, HOA Patrol, in bold letters. "You know what's strange about this?" he said. "That ain't a real HOA logo. Not even close." He stood, grabbed his old flip phone, and started dialing numbers. By noon, a man named Clint Bowers, a retired county surveyor, was standing in our driveway. Grandpa had called in a favor. Clint was one of those wiry old-timers who'd been around since before the subdivision even existed, the kind of man who remembered when land was marked by barbed wire and not by lawyers. He unrolled a set of old maps on our kitchen table, their edges torn and soft. "Your family's fence line hasn't moved an inch since 1949, Clint said, tracing his finger along the map. "But Maple Ridge Development? They shifted their boundary markers 5 feet west when they built that retention pond." 5 feet. I said, "You're sure?" "As sure as I am that water's wet," Clint said. "If anything, they are on your property." Grandpa nodded slowly, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Then we've got them cornered." That afternoon, we drove down to the county recorder's office in town. The clerk on duty, a young woman with tired eyes, pulled up the official records. And there it was, a recently filed correction to boundary adjustment, signed not by any HOA board member, but by a developer's representative from a company called Marion Land Group. Grandpa tapped the screen. "That's who's behind it." The clerk frowned. "Yeah, they've been buying up parcels around Maple Ridge, trying to expand." My stomach turned. So those fake HOA cops. Developers, Grandpa finished for me, trying to scare us off so they can claim the land's abandoned. He leaned closer to the screen, his voice low and dangerous. "They picked the wrong ranch. We didn't call the sheriff this time. Grandpa said it was better to let them dig their own hole. Law's slow," he said, "but stupid people are fast." That night, we set up trail cameras, the kind hunters use, hidden along the fence line. Grandpa positioned them facing both the road and the pasture. Then, as insurance, he installed a few more in less obvious spots, the barn roof, the gate post, even the old scarecrow near the field. "Let 'em think they're sneaky," he said. "I want every inch of this place watching them." The first 2 nights were quiet, but on the third, the cameras caught them. 3 trucks again, the same white pickups with fake decals. They pulled up after midnight, their headlights off. 4 men climbed out with crowbars and flashlights. One of them carried a jerrycan. When I saw the footage the next morning, my blood ran cold. "They were gonna burn the fence," I said. Grandpa's expression didn't change. "Then we'll give him something worth burning for." Over the next few days, he got busy, really busy. He welded, sawed, and worked through the nights, muttering to himself about pressure valves and ignition delay. When I asked what he was building, he just said, "Insurance." It wasn't until I saw the final result that I understood. Behind the new stretch of steel fence, hidden just below the soil line, Grandpa had installed a sprinkler system, but not for water. He'd rigged it to his old diesel tank, the one that used to power the generator during storms. A network of pipes ran underground, ending in nozzles pointed outward through small holes in the fence posts. He tested it once. When he flipped the switch, a fine mist sprayed out, invisible in the daylight, but enough to coat anything nearby in fuel. "Won't hurt anyone unless they bring fire," he said. "But if they do, the fire'll come right back at him." I stared at him. "Grandpa, that's insane." He just grinned. "So's ramming fences in the middle of the night." We didn't have to wait long. The next Friday, around 1 a.m., I woke to the sound of engines again, multiple vehicles, moving fast. I shook Grandpa awake. "They're back." He was already out of bed, pulling on his boots. "Let's finish this." We crept to the porch lights off, the only glow coming from the moon and the faint shimmer of headlights moving along the property line. Through the binoculars, I saw them, 4 men again, this time with bolt cutters and fuel cans. The leader, the man in aviators, motioned for the others to start pouring. Grandpa's hand hovered over the switch. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let him get comfortable." One of the men struck a match. That was Grandpa's cue. He flipped the switch. The nozzles hissed, and suddenly the air filled with mist. The men froze, confused, sniffing the air. One of them muttered something and started backing away. Then the match hit the ground. What happened next was chaos. A fireball roared up, chasing along the fence line like a dragon's breath. The flames shot backward toward the trucks, fueled by the same mist they'd been standing in. The men dove for cover as the heat washed across the field, igniting their own fuel cans. I could feel the shockwave from the porch. When it was over, one truck was burned to a husk. The others fled down the road, tires spinning, engines howling. Grandpa stood silent, the switch still in his hand. "Fire never lies," he said. The sheriff came out the next morning, and when he saw the wreckage, his eyebrows nearly disappeared. "You saying they tried to burn your fence and set fire to themselves instead?" Grandpa handed him the trail camera footage on a USB stick. "I'm saying you'll find your arsonist right there." The sheriff nodded, took the footage, and left without another word. By that evening, word had spread. The fake HOA cops were in the hospital, 2 with burns, 1 arrested for trespassing. Turns out, all 4 of them worked for Marion Land Group. And the man in aviators? He wasn't HOA at all. He was a developer's regional manager. A week later, a black SUV rolled up our drive, this time with real lawyers, not thugs. The man who stepped out was slick, city-dressed, smelling of expensive cologne. "Mr. Harlan," he said, addressing Grandpa, "we'd like to discuss a settlement." Grandpa leaned on his cane, eyes like steel. "The only thing I'll settle is this land. In the ground. With me." The lawyer swallowed. "Your fence caused significant property damage." "My fence didn't move an inch," Grandpa interrupted. "Maybe your boy should learn how boundaries work." The man fidgeted, realizing he was outmatched. "We'd prefer to avoid legal complications. Perhaps we could make you an offer." Grandpa cut him off again. "You can take your offer and pave your own driveway with it." Then he turned and walked back to the porch, leaving the man standing in the dust. That night, the valley was quiet for the first time in months. No engines, no lights, just crickets and the slow creak of the windmill. We sat on the porch, watching the stars. "You think it's over?" I asked. Grandpa smiled faintly. "It's never over, but they learned their lesson." He sipped his coffee, then added, "Funny thing about fences, folks think they keep people out, but sometimes they just show you who really wants in." A few months passed. The subdivision's development slowed, then stopped entirely. Rumor had it Marion Land Group pulled out after insurance refused to cover the accident. The burnt-out truck sat in their impound lot for weeks, a blackened reminder of what happens when greed meets steel. Grandpa rebuilt the damaged section, not because he had to, but because he wanted it perfect. The new post gleamed in the sunlight, welded solid and unbreakable. He mounted the old HOA patrol sticker on the fence post like a trophy. "Let 'em see it," he said. "Remind 'em that out here, we don't scare easy." It wasn't until months later, when I drove by Maple Ridge on an errand, that I noticed something new. The houses closest to our property had 4 sale signs in their yards. The once bustling development looked half empty, shutters closed, lawns yellowing. And on the edge of a manicured road, someone had scrawled graffiti on a real estate sign: "Don't mess with a Harlan Ranch." I couldn't help but grin. When I got home, Grandpa was sitting on the porch, whittling wood like always. "How was town?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. "Real quiet." He nodded, eyes glinting in the fading light. "Good. Quiet means I remember." Then he leaned back, the faintest smile curling his lips. "Funny thing about revenge," he said. "It don't bring peace, but sometimes it brings quiet. And out here, that's enough."